Welcome to the special Memorial Day edition of Faith Nation. Hope you're enjoying the holiday. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. Thank you for joining us. Well, we've seen in so many ways how the ongoing pandemic has taken its toll on all walks of life, and that certainly includes our service men and women.
So where can they turn when the stresses and pressures of life become all too daunting? CBN News national security correspondent Eric Phillips looks at the role of military chaplains during these unprecedented times.
Major General Thomas Soljem tells me spiritual fitness is a major pillar of military readiness. And he says during this challenging time, the 2,800 chaplains in his department are working overtime.
When you put on the uniform in service to your country, Eric, and you're asked to possibly lay down your life in rendering service to your country, we have a moral obligation to fulfill. To care for the soul of that soldier.
And Major General Soljem tells me that obligation to the soldier is more important than ever right now.
So you might have a death of a family member, for example, and you can't go to the funeral. Or you have parents that are aged and shut in and you can't get there. Now, we have seen a reporting from our chaplains out in the field that there's been a real increase in a number of different areas for soldiers and their families reaching out to them for assistance, for spiritual direction, guidance, and for religious care as well for those things.
The same types of sacrifice civilians face, coupled with the added responsibility of service.
So, as with any worship, worship is centered around the light of Christ. And so we very much intentionally are lighting this light of Christ.
To meet the need, chaplains have increased the hosting of live services.
It's really a new phenomenon, and I'm really pleased to see how our people have stepped up to embrace the virtual environment in order to really continue to help people to stay connected.
And today's thought is on the importance of small things.
It means chaplains of all faiths across all military branches, not just ministering to troops and their families, but to all who tune in.
So it's really taught us, I think, to raise the quality of our speaking, of what we offer people in a worship service or setting.
And they're getting creative, like with the drive-in Easter service at this installation in Japan, or this Navy virtual service in Pensacola, Florida.
They've been even doing things like Zoom potlucks, right? So chapel groups or religious groups, doing virtual potlucks, just wanting to maintain fellowship, because that's a very important connection. So I see it in all of the struggle that people are facing. It's a tremendous opportunity for people to be touched in their lives spiritually that in many ways life as normal may not have produced.
Soljem says another positive of this challenging time is those in his department learning of one another's faith in a deeper way. And he says no matter how many chaplains he has, there's always room for one more. Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Thanks, Eric. Well, of all the military branches, the United States Army is the only one without its own national museum outside of the U.S. Space Force.
But this year, that is all changing. The future capstone of the Army sits on a hill in Fort Belvoir, Virginia. Gabe LaMonica has a preview.
When it opens, the steel fortress behind me is going to be the Army's first national museum. It's been a long time coming, but the Army took us inside for a sneak peek. The big reveal of the U.S. Army emblem on the lobby floor comes some 2 years after installing the final steel beam, and some 200 years after the 13th U.S. Congress authorized a national museum for the Army.
We are the last service to have its own national museum.
It took a lot of heavy lifting to move in everything from this Cobra King battle tank, the first in Bastogne 38-ton legend that broke the German lines during World War II's Battle of the Bulge, to this M3 Bradley fighting vehicle that led the charge in the 2003 invasion of Baghdad. All before suspending this Vietnam-era UH-1 Huey from the ceiling and bringing in hundreds of artifacts in between. Now, the oldest branch of the U.S. military is rolling along and into a 185,000 square foot glass and steel citadel above 84 acres some 20 miles south of the nation's capital.
It represents a beacon again, the strength of the Army, the safety of the Army, and that's how we protect our citizens as well.
Tammy Call is the museum director.
We tell the Army's story, the comprehensive story, through the eyes and voices of our individual soldiers.
One of those voices belonging to the late Melvin Nestaby, who survived the Bataan Death March during World War II.
I will always be a soldier.
Hundreds of American soldiers died when the Japanese Army beat and tortured prisoners of war during a forced march of more than 60 miles.
A well of water springing up into everlasting life.
Nestaby's New Testament Pocket Bible is just one of over 7.4 million copies issued to American GIs during World War II.
Lack of water or starving, this helped them through that time.
And this good book carried Nestaby past the perils of murder and disease over the course of 4 POW camps in 3.5 years.
He carried that with him throughout the duration of the war.
Paul Mirando is the chief of exhibits.
He gave his life, his service to the United States Army, and his story, along with this Bible, needs to be told.
The museum will cover the history of the Army from the Revolutionary War to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The Army says that after over 240 years, this testament to its service and its soldiers is long overdue. Gabe LaMonica, CBN News, Fort Belvoir, Virginia.
All right, thank you, Gabe. Coming up, an insider's look at the fighter pilot school made famous in the movie Top Gun. See how the elite training ground began when Faith Nation returns.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. Well, 50 years ago, during the Vietnam War, the Navy desperately needed help. Enemy pilots were shooting down American planes at an alarming rate.
So the Navy turned to a young pilot who started an advanced air-to-air combat school in what would become known as Top Gun. Here's CBN's Heather Sells.
You may remember the 1986 movie Top Gun. It brought national attention to the Navy's elite fighter pilot school.
I feel the need for speed.
But it didn't tell the whole story. The story begins in 1956 when Dan Pedersen began flying for the Navy. Based off the West Coast, he and other young pilots flew the skies, ready to intercept Soviet bombers. But then the Vietnam War began, and suddenly the Navy began losing its very best in what it had long prided itself on, air-to-air combat.
You go to dinner at night, and there's empty chairs at the table.
Dan Pedersen founded the Navy's Top Gun school to take on an incredible challenge. The Navy was failing in the skies over Vietnam and losing its pilots at an astonishing rate.
The general thought was that all you had to do was send aviators into action, teach them how to use the equipment, and if they would do that, they would win victories.
Military historian Timothy Orr says the Navy went into the Vietnam War supremely confident after great success in the skies during the Korean War. It quickly began losing pilots, however, and Orr says that's because most had received little training in air combat.
They would get surprised by North Vietnamese MiGs, and if they got into a tangle with them, the MiGs, though they were vastly outdated, were very maneuverable, and the pilots of them knew how to push the limits of their aircraft.
In 1967, Pedersen was flying off the USS Enterprise off the Vietnam coast. In just 4 months, his air group lost 13 men. In what's known as the kill ratio, the Navy was losing 1 plane for every 2 it shot down.
You can't live with losing airplanes like we were, so we had to do something.
Pedersen documents that something, the founding of the Navy's Fighter Weapons School, in his new book. We met aboard the decommissioned USS Midway to talk about one of the great turnarounds in modern military history. For Pedersen, it started with the ALT report, a 1968 brief that examined all the Navy's problems in the air and recommended hardcore training as a remedy.
It was time to get well in the middle of a war, and the only way to get well in a hurry is to do a graduate level school. In other words, train a nucleus of people and have them go out and train the guys in the fleet.
The way the Navy looked at it was, in general, that they were relying too much on the technology, that they needed to kind of get back to teaching pilots how to dogfight, teach them how to use the tricks of the trade to outmaneuver their opponents in the air.
A Navy captain tapped Pedersen, a flight instructor at the Miramar Air Station at the time, to organize and found the school. He offered him no money, no mechanics, and no planes to call their own, along with a tight deadline.
I said, how much time I got? And he said, somewhere over 60 days to 90 days and to have the first class convened. I said, you gotta be kidding me. No, we're gonna do it here. No building, no classroom to teach in. He said, you can do it. He said, improvise.
One of Pedersen's instructors found an abandoned trailer and paid a crane operator a case of scotch to move it. Pedersen then picked 8 of Miramar's finest pilots who would teach a new generation how to dogfight all over again and push their planes to their limits.
You may train, you may think you're the best, but you're going to find out for real. And if you don't do it right, you don't go home.
The extremely practical and finely tuned curriculum, taught by specialists who understood mechanics, the tactics of the enemy, and the need for innovation, would make all the difference. 3 years later, in the next major aerial campaign against Vietnam, the kill ratio improved 600%. The Navy was now losing 1 plane for every 12 it shot down. Looking back, Pedersen sees the hand of God in it all and says the original bros do as well.
There are no atheists flying combat airplanes. They may think they are for a while, but over the course of time, they'll have things happen to them or their airplane that will bring God right to the surface.
Today, Top Gun continues to take just the top 1% of the Navy's pilots and train them to train others.
The reason that U.S. Navy pilots are among the elite is because of the education they receive.
Pedersen says he considers Top Gun to be bigger and better than ever. But he says he wrote the book for high school kids, trying to figure out what they want to do. He hopes they'll consider the Navy and maybe even flying if they're up for a challenge like no other. Reporting in San Diego, Heather Sells, CBN News.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. It's estimated a military veteran commits suicide every hour of every day.
One organization is working to change that, though, by rescuing, rebuilding, and restoring those who serve our country. Mark Martin has the story.
Veterans fighting overseas not only suffer physically, but emotionally as well. Hidden battle scars that make life difficult back home. That's where Operation Restored Warrior comes in. To find it, CBN News traveled to the heart of Colorado. With its wide open spaces and large horse corral, the Four Eagle Ranch resembles something out of the Old West. But take a closer look and you'll see much more. Organizers of Operation Restored Warrior say it's a location where healing takes place. While the program welcomes all faiths, its core Christian ministry is the 5-day program called the Drop Zone.
A drop zone is a place in enemy territory where you go take that ground. And very often in kind of Christian environments, we refer to things as retreats. I'm going to go to a retreat. And that just didn't sit well with us as professional military men. It's like, well, why are we retreating? How about if we go gain ground? So we specifically call coming to a drop zone a counterattack. And that appeals to warriors.
That counterattack is threefold: rescue, rebuild, and restore.
Warriors come to this place because they're looking for hope. And often the enemy has just beat them down. But this is the place where they know there's some hope. And then when they get here, what they find out is that this is where healing is. And that hope and healing is here because Jesus is here.
The intensive program targets areas of the heart that need healing. ORW leaders hold to the belief psychology reveals, Jesus heals, and say it's been proven hundreds of times. For participants like Navy veteran Paul Williams, the program can be a literal lifesaver.
July 2nd of this year, I had written a note, and I was ready to go. And it just didn't happen. You know, I went back to my truck to go get the gun, and it wasn't there. So I just started praising Jesus with my praise and worship music and said, you know what, I need to give this ORW, Operation Restored Warrior, a really good shot.
And that decision led to victory.
I was able to open up to Paul, the founder of ORW, about all the trash that I've been carrying. And it felt so good to finally just let it out, you know. I can't thank this organization enough. I mean, I came here fighting for my life, And I'm going to walk away a champion. So, I love them a lot, and I'm super thankful for it.
Former atheist Paul Lavelle started ORW 9 years ago.
Around 2008, I felt like Jesus just put in my heart that he had gifted me my whole life to rescue people. And I felt like I had a unique gift of healing as well, but I had no idea it had to do with anything spiritual. And about 2008, I just felt this nudge that I had to do something. ORW, our focus is to heal. And we bring Jesus into that healing process.
Army veteran Braxton Dunbar dealt with many things, including suicidal thoughts before coming to ORW.
I was definitely a broken man. Had a lot of depression and anxiety, a lot of anger, a whole lot of anger, and just felt lost. Really, just didn't know where my place was. Didn't know how to find my place either.
Dunbar accepted Christ during the drop zone and decided to get baptized.
The same individual that prayed with me, Jordan, kind of came to me and said, you know, you accepted him yesterday and you verbally accepted him into your life. Would you want to show the action of it? And there was no question at all. I said, absolutely, I'd love to.
Retired Air Force chaplain Steve Frick also received healing through the program.
ORW doesn't just help, they heal. And that's a little hard to hear when you first get here, but I'm telling you, it's true.
In addition to powerful sessions building up the faith of the men, the drop zone also allows time for recreational activities like fly fishing. What can they learn from this? Lavelle says it nourishes the soul, among other things.
The reason we do the activities is because it's part of a spiritual longing for a man to have adventure in his life. It's one of the core desires of a man. And so as part of this restoration process, we want to remind them that there is adventure out there.
Retired Command Sergeant Major Chris Fields is the drop zone lead facilitator. He too once contemplated taking his life and also lost fellow service members to suicide. Fields understands the urgency of going through this program before it's too late.
Don't wait another moment to reach out and to ask for help. I used to think that I was 10 feet tall and bulletproof. I ate barbed wire in the morning, and you can surmise what I did in the afternoon. But when I reached out for help, I'm stronger than I ever was. And it just takes one moment to say, okay, let me see what this is all about. And then let Jesus take it from there.
Mark Martin, CBN News, Walcott, Colorado.
Mark, coming up, from flowers to personal mementos and even a Harley, we explore some of what visitors paying homage to America's fallen heroes have left behind at the Vietnam Wall.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream. The chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities. The chance to stand on the promises of God. To recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Finally tonight on this Memorial Day, a visit to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial here in Washington.
It's often adorned with all kinds of special mementos, from personal letters to a motorcycle. But where do they go after they've been cleared away? Once again, here's our Gabe LaMonica with this behind-the-scenes look.
Close to 60,000 U.S. service members were killed in the nearly 2-decade-long Vietnam War. In the nearly 4 decades since this memorial was built, some 230,000 items have been left here in their memory.
We are here in An Cay, South Vietnam.
I am in Bravo Troop, 1st of the 9th Cavalry. I really can't think all that much to tell you, except I'm doing fine.
Before his death in a helicopter crash, First Lieutenant Robert Prine had only been in Vietnam for 20 days.
Also would appreciate a letter.
Prine carried these audio tapes with him before sending them home.
Keep care of yourself.
For years, visitors have carried things and left them at this wall.
They say as much about us as it says about the wall.
The mementos are picked up each night by National Park Rangers like Cawthor Elmy.
It runs the gamut from culturally significant items and specific to the war to things coming from children like Dear Soldier. And it's just a piece of paper with their name saying thank you for your service.
From prosthetic legs to personal letters, from the Purple Heart to religious medals and a family Bible. The items are kept here in a government warehouse under the care of Janet Folkerts. Some of the things they let go of are heavy, like this Harley-Davidson motorcycle. The Hero bike was left by a group of veterans from Wisconsin.
They say it's not to be ridden on until all 37 men are brought home.
Other things carry memories, like the kimono one soldier sent home 2 days before his death.
Sent to Liz saying it will match her aqua eyes.
She kept it for 40 years before letting it go. Not everything makes the cut.
We had a lot of really random, unknown items.
But Ranger Elmy says the things they leave behind provide a connection to this hallowed ground.
There's this umbilical cord between our response to these people's sacrifice.
The names of every American service member killed or missing in the Vietnam War are etched into this wall. The objects people leave here tell their stories. Gabe LaMonica, CBN News, Washington.
And it is a remarkable sight. Thank you, Gabe. That does it for Faith Nation.
Happy Memorial Day.